Creepypasta readings, number 7, 8 various stories. 4 of them suck. Story 1. Super Redacted 64. One day I found a copy of Super Mario 64 left on the ground, so I started my N64, but there was no letter from Peach. That's weird, I thought. And Mario's clothes, the colors were inverted. His hat and overalls were blue, and his pants were red. I entered Big Boo's haunt, but it was weird. Big Boo said, "Mario, you won't escape." Just then Luigi came and ground pounded Big Boo to death. Strange, Luigi never was in the game. I got the star, but a cutscene played. Luigi said, "Mario, help me." Then Luigi started to decay. I almost barfed. Luigi then died. Mario cried over his brother's death. Mario went to fight Bowser, then killed him by using his own fire to burn him. The end scene showed Luigi decay with one eyeball hanging out and broken teeth. He said goodnight. I then passed out. Story 2. Herobrine Terror. It had started on January 9th, 2013. I just bought Minecraft and Call of Duty for my child's 11th birthday, which might have been the worst decision anyone could make, let's be honest here. Now I might have to deal with sounds of gunshots throughout my house, which would be extremely annoying to say the least. When it was time for my child to open his presents after demolishing the cake, the first game he had put into the Xbox 360 was Minecraft. I sat there watching him play the game, and I could tell that he genuinely likes the game. I just bought the game from a creepy old man at a flea market for free, which is a great choice on my part. I had saved money. I don't particularly like buying items from crack addicts, but this was a deal. I wasn't going to drive to the nearest Best Buy and buy a game over $30. However, as days went by, strange things would to the game. Cohen, my bastard child's son, would complain about how random players would somehow gain entry into his server and grief everything. I didn't think anything of it, because he could have accidentally put his game into multiplayer mode. Also, this user by the name of Herobrine, or whatever his name is, was trolling my son. He wouldn't stop bothering me with, "OMGZ, OMG, scary, Herobrine has destroyed my world, bruh, WTH, before crying about, "Herobrine is scary creepypasta." What the fuck is a creepypasta? Since when did Cohen become traumatized about spooky spaghetti? I don't know, maybe he should stay off the internet for a while. I woke up this morning with the wonderful sounds of birds chirping, bees buzzing, and the sounds of Cohen screaming about seeing Herobrine to his friends on Omegle. I was annoyed beyond belief. After that day, I took the Minecraft game and burned it. I then replaced the game with Banjo-Kazooie nuts and bolts. Story 3. What Lurks at Night. It was the year of 1969. I remember it like it was yesterday. Of course, I was a bit of a troublemaker back then, but I will never forget what I saw. It was a Saturday. Me and my girlfriend Lily decided that night to go down to the docks. It was the last day of summer break, and we just wanted to spend the last day together. No distractions, no excuses, and no friends, just us. I was walking out of my house. It was 9:30-ish by the time I had arrived at the docks. I was wearing a brown jacket, jeans, and some old sneakers, and my short brown hair was brushed out. I had glasses on over my pale blue eyes. As I made my way down to the docks, there she was standing looking at the water. Her long red hair blew gently in the wind that passed by. She wore a simple dress with flowers on it and sandals. God, she was everything to me. Her green eyes and freckled face, she was beautiful. "Hey, Lily," I said to her. She looked at me and smiled. "Hey, John," she replied. We spent hours together until I had to go to the bathroom. Now the docks are to my right and everything else to my left. You had to turn around and take a right and then a left and then another left to get to the bathroom area. I was only gone for 5 minutes. I had this night planned. I was going to propose to her. I finished using the bathroom as I walked out and made my way back, and then I froze there. He stood 14 feet tall, a hunched body like a human. Even his face looked human. His eyes were orange, but blood trickled down from his eye sockets. His nose was short and a little crooked, but his smile, he had no top lip or bottom lip. He only had a mouth showing dagger-like teeth. They were shaped like a shark's teeth. His skin was rough. It would be in a pattern of a V shape like a snake's scale. His skin color was black, but he had a sort of smoky fog come off him, as if he didn't have a physical body, and his arms were long. It wasn't normal. His nails were long and sharp. His legs were decent, but they barely had any muscle on them. As I stood there, he looked right at me, a 22-year-old male who was pale and looked like a ghost from seeing this thing in front of me. He had Lily in his arms. She looked at me, tears streaming down her face. She was petrified, and then I was petrified as he spoke. "Thank you for the meal, but I must be going now." And that's when he vanished within the blink of an eye. He was gone, so was Lily. I remember breaking down and crying after that. I never saw him or Lily again. Story 4. The Worio Apparition. They say that there is an entity lurking around on some personalized copies of Super Mario 64. They first caught a glimpse of it during Nintendo's E3 panel in 1996, but it was largely ignored. You will get to see it, but there is a ritual involved. What you need: a Nintendo 64 console with one controller, a copy of Super Mario 64. Instructions: 1. Start on a new game. If you already have progress, skip to step 3. 2. Play until you get 30 stars. This will unlock the room where the apparition lives. 3. Wish with all your heart that Mario is not alone and that there are more characters, or something like that. 4. Keep wishing until you go through the 30-star door. If your controller stops working and the music slows down, it means your wish has been sent throughout the universe and someone heard it on the other end. 5. An image of Wario's head should fade in through the portal where Dire Dire Docks is located. Depending on the personalization you have, Wario should look different. All the versions of Wario have one thing in common: a higher poly count than usual, something like Andross or Bowser would have. 6. It is most recommended that the moment you see Wario, you should turn the game off as fast as you can. If so, skip to step 8. If you wait any longer, Wario will say, "You want fun? Wario show you fun." The theme for the Endless Stairway begins to play and Wario will start flying towards Mario at incredible speed. You'd expect at this point that Mario would run to the door, go through, and that would be it, right? Sadly, no. 7. Where the door should have been is now an endless hallway, making Mario run endlessly. Unfortunately, Wario is much faster, and he will catch Mario within 15 seconds, unless you turn the game off before he does. The creepy ascending xylophone music gets faster as the giant laughing head closes in. 8. Should you turn the game off, the moment you return to the game, everything will be back to normal. The ritual has worked and is now complete. If you reset the game, Mario will still chase you. Several people have tried this ritual throughout the 90s, and those who let Wario catch Mario, well, nobody knows what happened. Okay, stop everything. Stop everything. What the fuck did I just read? Those last 4 stories... Did they even try? Did they even try? I don't think they tried. Was this a joke? Or was this their serious attempt at making a creepypasta? Because these, I'm looking through them again. What the fuck? Were these purposely made to be bad? Or, I don't, God, when I was reading them, I couldn't believe the stuff it was saying in them. I had to keep from laughing. I mean, in other episodes, you've heard me laugh a little bit in some of them, but these, it was more like I was cringing. Ugh. What the fuck? Look, if you're the ones who wrote these, I'm sorry if I'm being harsh, but ugh. Ooh, those were just hard to read. I mean, if you wrote them bad on purpose, then okay, but if this is your serious attempt, you really need to get better. Because these are what would be thought as crappypastas, not creepypastas. Oh my god, but okay. Enough with that, let's get on with the good stories now. Story 5. Hong Kong 97 Conspiracy Theory. Ever since the review of Hong Kong 97 for the Nintendo Super Famicom, most people have been asking this question: was that a real dead body? The answer is rather disturbing. The claim is that the dead body is of a man named Leszek Planansky, a Polish boxer who committed suicide in 1992. Not much is known on how exactly he killed himself, and we do not even know that much about him in the first place. If you look around the web for him, all you get is a few bits and pieces of him. It is known that the people who made the game were protesting against the Chinese government trying to obtain Hong Kong, hence the story of the game. What is not known is the fact that the game was made only 3 years after Leszek Planansky's death. This is a pretty short time after his death. An even more interesting thing is that he died shortly after Poland and China had increased bilateral trading. Looking at the body, it appears Leszek Planansky may have been beaten on the head to death. It looks that could be the case due to the lack of blood on the body and the abundance of it on the face. But is there more to it? What if instead of a suicide, it was a murder planned by Happysoft as a way of protesting against the Chinese government? What if the video game's disturbing imagery was an attempt to scare the people of Hong Kong into not joining with the Chinese? This would explain a lot of things like the lack of info on Leszek Blanansky in the internet and the sudden shortage of Hong Kong 97 games. Happysoft was hidden from the public eye and was shut down by the Chinese government. Clearly this game is more than it seems. One thing makes this theory highly plausible. The image is not a scan from a photo, but a still from a VHS tape. The time code TCR01:10:25:27 means this still is 1 hour, 10 minutes, 25 seconds, and 27 frames. Each frame contains 2 fields into the recording. That makes it very much possible that the VHS tape not only contains the image of Leszek's body, but his whole murder. This would explain why there was no other instance of the photo on the internet. If Happysoft were the only owners of the VHS tape, there is no way anyone would ever have access to it. If there is any more info that you can find, please let the world know. Story 6. Misfortune.gb. Misfortune is an obscure game for the original Game Boy. Since no known hard copies or ROMs exist, all information about the game is derived from personal accounts and a scant assemblage of screenshots. The game does not contain any credits, and whoever created it is still unknown to this day. The few people who have experienced it consider it to be one of the scariest video games ever made. Given its age and cult following among rare horror game enthusiasts, it's entirely possible that authors of widely known creepypastas such as Sonic.exe and Lavender Town Syndrome drew inspiration from Misfortune. Story/concept. The player controls what appears to be a young boy in a strange gothic building. After brief exploring, the player is confronted by a malevolent being. Despite the character never identifying itself, some people, citing notable similarities, claim that it may be a representation of Baphomet, Beelzebub, or even the devil. Upon meeting the mysterious creature, a dialogue box will appear with the text, "I exist within the very fabric of reality. Do you want to challenge me?" This is followed by a yes or no choice. Should the player choose yes, the being replies, "Then let's begin." Gameplay. The player is then transported to a series of maze-like rooms, each filled with pit drops, locked doors, keys, and traps. The objective for the player is to progress through each room by either reaching the stairs to the next level or solving another kind of puzzle. This can include answering riddles or choosing correct doors or pathways. The most well-known example is in a level where 4 small cabins are shown on screen. A dialogue box will appear that reads, "Choose wrong and misfortune will befall your loved ones. Are you ready to play?" Should the player ever make a mistake throughout the game, the screen will cut to black before showing a more detailed image of the demon along with the dialogue box reading, "I am God here," in what appears to be blood-styled writing. Alleged side effects. Rumors pertaining to the game's alleged harmful effects began to surface on the internet around the late 1990s. Players claimed to have begun experiencing ongoing depression and dread shortly after losing and seeing the game over screen. Once prominent members of online forums who told such claims are thought to have died or disappeared when they suddenly became inactive without warning. Heated discussions soon dominated these forums for some time, but the mystery never seemed to be getting any closer to being solved. Some wrote the whole thing off as a tasteless practical joke. Others believed that viewing the image of the evil character after losing the game can really cause the player to experience misfortune, as the game's antagonist promised. Soon people began to speculate that the eerie soundtrack of the game was the cause. Soundtrack. The music in the game consisted of deep, buzzy tones, off-key melodies. The game had a remarkably unsettling soundtrack despite composition being limited to the 8-bit Game Boy sound bank. The game over screen had especially erratic, almost nauseating music, with a very high frequency that accompanied it. Rumor has it that this very track could somehow influence moods and thought patterns. Of all the tracks in the game, only the theme that plays when first meeting the demonic entity can be found on the internet today. Availability. Searching for playable ROMs or cartridges online is futile because none exist. In fact, most of those who have played it directly hadn't sought out looking for it, but rather stumbled upon it by accident. According to our first-hand accounts, certain copies of various Game Boy titles contain Misfortune in its entirety. The means for accessing it through these games vary, but typically involve exploiting glitches or using cheating devices. Although some had detailed what they had done to trigger Misfortune to start, attempts by others using the same methods had always failed. Another common observation was that many of the sprites in Misfortune had been copied from its host games. Misfortune is known to be integrated in the following: The Legend of Zelda Link's Awakening, Pokemon Red, Spud's Adventure, Poochie Carrot, Altair Marie Japanese version. Closing thoughts. For this section, I'm going to be speaking to you a lot less impartially and a lot more personally. It's important you hear this part. Now, is the game really cursed? Does a specter really bite within and snare the innocent in its deadly game? Who knows? What I do know is that the game definitely exists. I also know what it can do. I've never played it myself, you see, but I knew someone who did. A good friend of mine, actually. We were closer than brothers and we told each other everything. He was the most enthusiastic, outgoing guy I ever met, and, like me, he was really into video games. Sure enough, one day he told me that he found a spooky new side game hidden in Pokemon. He showed it to me, and even back then it gave me an odd feeling. Though, to be fair, I was always easily scared. Soon after, he started talking less and less. Later, he'd either ignore my calls or tell me he was sick or busy when I invited him out. He became something of a recluse. I did still sometimes get to see him at high school, but he rarely spoke and snapped at me when I pried too much over why he was acting that way. About a month later, before he got off the train after school, he said goodbye for the first time in weeks. I'll never forget the look he gave me that day. He was the macho, nothing gets to me type of guy, and he always masked his emotion really well, but now he had a face filled with grief, like he was about to cry. He made me promise him one thing before he left, that I never played that game. That was the last time we spoke. The next morning, they found his scratched and bloodied corpse hanging from his disassembled weight machine. The police concluded that he managed to lift 220 pounds of weights over his head with the cord still attached, looped it around his neck, and released it over the other side of the machine, causing his strangulation as the weight on the other side yanked him upwards. The most horrible detail was that he was found with his hands clutching the inside of the makeshift noose as if he were trying to tug it loose. That was it. The case was closed. Personally, I don't believe that's what happened. If you are a collector or perhaps just heard the legend and want to experience the game for yourself, you should reconsider. Even if you deny the existence of demons and curses, the misfortune that will befall you is very real. You have been warned. Story 7. Pac-Man. You remember Pac-Man? Yeah, the little yellow ball who has been the main mascot for Namco, now merged with Bandai, for 35 years now. The fellow will always have a place in my heart since the days I played Pac-Man World 2 on my GameCube. I didn't like the new reboot they gave him and all, though, as they made him an annoying high school kid trying too hard to be cool. But that isn't the point. Before I start, it's obvious that I'm a Pac-Man fan. I originally played the original arcade game on World 2's arcade bonus area, which allowed you to play all of the classic games from the 80s. One day I was chatting with my friend on Skype, who allegedly told me that he found a supposed version of Pac-Man, a ROM that was found locked away in a safe in the back of an old arcade in some abandoned amusement park and extracted from a damaged PCB board. Honestly, I didn't believe him, but he gave me a link that I kept noted for a few days later, since I was busy with school at the time. File, pacman.exe. Eventually, when I got home one late Friday, I hopped on my computer as I was originally going to play more Left 4 Dead 2 or Quake Live. However, I was reminded of the link my friend gave me thanks to the trusty notepad file I'd saved to my desktop. I opened the link up and was taken to a browser page. The page itself had the story and stated that players who were able to finish this original arcade game board suffered severe psychological and occasional physiological trauma up to and including death of the subject, and that the ROM's effect is significantly reduced. I put my hand over my face and corpsed, thinking this was all going to be another Lavender Town Syndrome hoax. But I digressed and clicked the link leading to where I could play the game on my browser so I didn't have to risk downloading it and getting any creepy viruses, I guess. The game loaded with a corrupted ROM startup, accompanied by loud static before displaying the words "Insert Coin." I noticed it briefly flash from coin to soul for about a split second now and then. I hit enter and started the game. The familiar maze board that many gamers probably remember displayed along with Pac-Man in the middle where the fruit would usually appear. The little jingle that was stuck in my head as a child played, but it was really off. It started out normal before slowing down, then speeding up and growing loud toward the end, while also going at a lower key. Once the jingle finished, I could move Pac-Man, presented by his iconic pizza shape. One thing I noticed was that I couldn't see any pellets unless Pac-Man came into view in certain channels. I also occasionally saw a blue ghost roaming the maze. He had a sad face in the style of that of a jack-o'-lantern, almost reminding me of something out of Ghosts and Goblins, honestly. Munching Pac-Dots played his usual waka waka sound effect, but it was much deeper than usual. The ghost siren in the background was also slowed down. There were a few power pellets, as any Pac-Man game would have, of course. I ate one and was briefly able to see a full view of the Pac-Dots and the location of the ghosts. This did not allow me to eat them, however, as when I touched the ghost, I simply died. Dying resulted in one of three things. The screen would zoom in on where Pac-Man had died and spin around while his death sound would play, but then contort into static. The screen would freeze before restarting, or the sprite of the ghost would flash up on the screen, along with a loud screech. Needless to say, it pissed me off. I eventually cleared the first board and the next level started. This time there was a red ghost who had a sinister smile. If he saw Pac-Man, he would charge down the channel you were on of the maze with an obnoxious buzzing sound. I should also add the fact that the level counter would occasionally flash names which I presume were the new ghosts that were added each time. The first level was named Blindy, which I can only assume is because he moves around randomly like Clyde. This time it was Screamy. Judging from his AI's behavior, I think the name was well fitting. If you got out of his line of sight or while he was charging, would make things a bit easier. Only last thing to mention is occasionally his sprite flickered between his rather sinister bony grin to the original 8-bit sprite of Blinky, the red ghost in Namco's, or if you are American, Midway, original arcade cabinets. The next level introduced a much more annoying ghost named Slendy, and as the name implies, he acted somewhat like Slender Man in a way. He would teleport around the maze at random and even pop up right in front of your face. All music and sound stopped if he was in your view. If you stayed in his line of sight, he would start getting an angry look on his face and then eventually turn yellow. At this point, if he does turn yellow, he will more than likely teleport on top of you. The next level introduced Old One, who happened to be pink. This was probably the worst of all, as he would follow Pac-Man and phase through the walls of the board. His appearance was probably the most interesting compared to the other ghosts. He had strange tentacles like an octopus or a squid, and he had some strange spot on the top of his head, almost like some sort of gemstone. Also, unlike the other three, he was the only one lacking a mouth completely. The fifth level was when things started getting weirder though. The walls of the maze started disappearing. No, I'm not even kidding, they were vanishing and I could go through the board freely. It became more annoying this way considering I couldn't stay straight and the ghost got an advantage. After clearing this board, I noticed the next level was exactly the same. I can only presume the rest of the game was like this now, so I ended my game here. Dying results in a screen asking play again, along with a countdown. Accepting just resets the game, while letting the timer run out simply printed out game over in white text. If the latter of the three results I mentioned earlier regarding Pac-Man's death occurred, you get a jump scare of Screaming with a screech when the timer reached a certain point. Afterward, there would be a red screen with insert coin occasionally flickering to please help. Eventually, I closed the game out and went to bed. Honestly, I never knew a classic could be given a dark twist, at least not like this. I really hope this was not a real game, for if it was, then I really feel guilty for those who had to play this. Update. I had recently came back to this game after I saw this community's leader, Mudahar, has played this game. It had apparently been updated just recently. The following text was as followed. Report, October 16, 2015. Additional repairs were completed on original arcade PCB sections N1 through R6. Technician casualties M. Harper fell into catatonic state during testing, declared brain dead. New ROM compiled, noticeable changes unknown. End report. Most of the updates did list the supposed technicians who did edits to the PCB board, all either died some way of some cause. This however caught me, as it didn't list as many details as the others. So, out of curiosity, I decided to play the ROM. Playing through levels 1 to 5 weren't too much different. The sound seemed to be altered slightly though, mainly Pac-Man's death, where it would sometimes play halfway before turning to white noise. Here it only played half of the soundbite over and over like a broken record. The screech on the jump scare was also changed to high-pitched white noise. When I got to level 6 though is when things got interesting. Upon entering this level, the walls of the maze were back. I began munching my way along the channels of pack dots. It was quiet though. The ghost siren wasn't playing in the background. I was rather suspicious and continued onward. There weren't even ghosts in the little ghost box. After munching a certain number of dots led to something unexpected. I heard this loud, higher-pitched waka waka. Eating a power pellet, I found out what exactly this thing was. It was another Pac-Man, but it was dark gray. I wasn't exactly freaked out though until after eating another set amount of dots. All the text boxes with score, lives, and whatnot changed to run. What sounded like the eyeball sound, what you hear after you eat a ghost in the arcade version as it runs back to the box in the middle, at a deeper pitch started playing. The dark Pac-Man started moving faster. Eventually it caught up with me and the screen started glitching, showing several sprites and letters. Pretty much the original level 256 taken to a whole new level of weirdness. After this, the screen cleared up and I was taken to a first-person view? What the hell? The graphics were pretty much like Wolfenstein 3D and Doom. Pack dots laid around and I couldn't tell what exactly was happening. Eventually I came across Pac-Man? What exactly was going on here? He was a 2D sprite with about 4 different directions, much like the said games above. He seemed to be wandering around the maze. I was confused and pondered to myself a bit. Then it hit me. I was a ghost. I decided my natural instinct was to catch the yellow orb per usual. It seemed he was running away from me, but even if that was the case, it was freaky seeing the damn thing coming forward with wide open jaws, even if it's his simple pizza appearance. Upon touching him 3 times, the game window flashed to black and simply stayed that way. Upon closing, I can't help but wonder, what could this mean? Could this mean the ghosts were past Pac-Mans? Or even worse, past players? You can find a few versions of this game on the internet if you wish to play it, probably the most popular place resides on GameJolt. However, I warn you, you may not want to play it. I still love Pac-Man to this day and the original arcade game especially, but I never thought there was a darker tale to this maze. Story 8. Channel 24. I never knew what I was watching half of the time. Sometimes my curiosity got the better of me and I went browsing through the channels. Ever since the incident of Caldeon Local 21 in 1999, I have been suspicious about TV channels. Well, not as much as I was when I discovered Channel 24 on October 2nd, 2004. Channel 24 WGLA was a local TV channel really close to my location. They have been broadcasting since the late 60s and have continued to do so. The shows the channel aired were interesting to say the least. It had news just like any other channel, as well as extra shows like any main media channel would do. But this one wasn't a main channel like any of the Fox channels that were near my location. I only got about 6 Fox channels and that was it. Well, it was nice to see another channel added to the list of about 28 channels on my old TV. Every day after school I would tune into Channel 24 to watch their top-notch TV programming and high-quality shows and paid programming. On October 2nd, the day I first saw the channel, I was really concerned about their programming and their news coverage. It almost seemed weird to me until October 3rd, where I got more used to their programs and schedules. It became a channel I would watch every day and be intrigued by their every show and news hour. October 4th was that golden day of Channel 24. The channel got tons of new shows to fill in some gaps in their programming lineup. The new shows were mostly made for teens and kids from ages 4 to 9. The new shows ranged from learning shows up to anime like Pokemon, among other stuff. I almost grew an attraction to this channel after that day. October 5th, news was around 3 hours that day, ranging from politics to top stories. Those 3 hours of news had it all. It was great, but the paid programming that day was better. October 6th was a day of a movie marathon. Movies ranged from classic to western all the way up to action movies. It was a great day on Channel 24 until the next day came along. I stood up at 9 p.m. to watch Channel 24 because I felt like it, and I was intrigued by their unbeatable programs and shows. It was going great until right on midnight. Right on the stroke of midnight, the channel was hijacked by some other organization or signal trying to scare us. This weird subliminal broadcast intrusion message ranted on about some beast that was apparently possibly God himself. It started to type up JESU before it was abruptly cut off and was replaced with a color bar screen. Channel 24 then sent a message on screen. We have detected an intrusion in our network. At exactly 12:02 a.m. on October 7, 2004, our signal was hijacked by another network or signal. We are doing our best to restore order. In the meantime, please hold as we attempt to restore our broadcast signal. Sorry for the inconvenience. It was then interrupted again by another signal intrusion going on about some devil and how they were a prophecy of whatever this thing was. Then it was cut off again just as they were about to reveal the devil's name. Another message then appeared on the screen, this time from the people who were broadcasting the programs present. We are still trying to counteract against a signal intrusion we are currently experiencing. As we continue to remedy this hijacking, we encourage you to stay on in case we get closer and closer to fixing the issue. Programming is on a hold until further notice. Thank you for your patience. It was then intruded again and changed to more subliminal messages, ranting on about Satan not existing and that Jesus is also the devil. The invaders then took over the channel and modified the programs to be almost nightmare fueled. I never watched Channel 24 again after that.